What if the institutions telling you gold is a barbarous relic are secretly buying more of it than any time in over half a century? What if the same central banks printing trillions of dollars, euros, and yen are quietly converting that paper into the one asset that has outlasted every empire, every currency, and every financial crisis in human history? This isn't speculation. This is documented fact. In 2024, central banks around the world purchased over 1,136 tons of gold. That's the third consecutive year of record-breaking accumulation. The last time we saw buying even close to this level? 1967, right before the London gold pool collapsed and the entire Bretton Woods system came crashing down. But here's what should really keep you up at night. They're not talking about it. No press conferences, no policy papers, just quiet, systematic accumulation while telling the public that everything is fine. The question isn't whether something is happening. The question is, what do they know that we don't? Before we dive in, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I'm always amazed at how global this community has become. People from over 80 countries now tuning in to understand what's really happening with money. If you're new here, subscribe and hit the bell. This channel exists to show you what the financial media won't, the patterns they hope you never connect. Let's start with what the official story doesn't explain. To understand why this gold buying matters, we need to go back to a time when central banks were doing the exact opposite, desperately selling gold to defend a system that was already dying: London. The world's major central banks had formed something called the London Gold Pool, an agreement to coordinate gold sales and keep the price fixed at $35 per ounce. The United States had promised the world that every dollar was backed by gold at that rate. Foreign governments could exchange their dollars for American gold anytime they wanted. There was just one problem. America was printing far more dollars than it had gold to back them. France figured it out first. Charles de Gaulle started demanding gold for France's dollar reserves, famously sending warships to collect physical metal from New York. Other countries followed. The London Gold Pool was hemorrhaging gold trying to defend the $35 price. Sound familiar? By 1968, the pool collapsed. Central banks couldn't sell fast enough to suppress the price. 3 years later, Nixon closed the gold window entirely, ending the last link between the dollar and gold. What followed was exactly what gold had prevented for centuries: unlimited currency creation. The dollar lost 97% of its purchasing power. The national debt went from $400 billion to $34 trillion. Asset prices exploded while real wages stagnated. Now here's the pattern you need to see. In the 1960s, central banks were net sellers, desperately trying to maintain confidence in a paper system backed by gold. Today, central banks are net buyers, desperately trying to acquire gold before confidence in the paper system disappears entirely. Sound familiar? The behavior has inverted because the situation has inverted. In 1967, they were defending paper with gold. In 2024, they're abandoning paper for gold. And just like in the 1960s, the ones making the biggest moves are the ones who see the writing on the wall first. Let's look at who's actually buying. China officially added 225 tons in 2024, but analysts estimate their actual accumulation is 3 to 5 times higher. Gold purchased through non-reported channels, held in accounts that don't show up in official reserves. Why would they hide it? Because announcing a massive gold purchases would spike the price before they're done accumulating. You don't tell the market you're buying until you've finished buying. Poland, a NATO member, added over 130 tons. Turkey, India, Singapore, Czech Republic, all accumulating aggressively. Notice who's largely absent from the buying? The United States, the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank. The Western central banks that designed the current dollar-based system aren't buying gold. The central banks looking for an exit from that system are. Sound familiar? It should. In the 1960s, it was France and others demanding gold from America. Today, It's China, Russia, and the global south accumulating gold while reducing dollar reserves. The geography of distrust hasn't changed, just the names and the numbers. Here's what makes 2024 different from 1967. Back then, central banks were obligated to maintain the gold standard. They sold because the rules demanded it. Today, there are no rules, no gold standard, no obligation. These central banks are choosing to buy gold with their own money in a system that supposedly doesn't need gold at all. Ask yourself, why would they do that? Now here's where the official narrative completely falls apart. Central bankers have spent 50 years telling us that gold is irrelevant, a barbarous relic. That's the famous phrase. Modern monetary theory says governments can print whatever they need. Gold is just a shiny rock that pays no interest. So why are these same institutions, the ones who print money, who set interest rates, who tell us the system is stable, why are they converting their own paper into that barbarous relic at the fastest pace since the Vietnam War? The answer reveals something they will never admit publicly. There's a concept in game theory called revealed preferences. It means you ignore what people say and watch what they do. Words are cheap. Actions are expensive. If someone says they hate pizza but orders it every night, they don't hate pizza. Central banks say gold is irrelevant. Central banks are buying more gold than any time in 55 years. Their revealed preference is screaming something their press releases never will. They don't trust their own system. Think about what that means. The Federal Reserve, the ECB, the Bank of Japan, these are the institutions that control the money. They can create dollars, euros, yen with a keystroke, unlimited amounts. Why would anyone with a money printer need gold? Unless they know the money printer has an expiration date. Unless they're watching the same debt charts we're about to look at and realizing mathematics doesn't care about monetary policy. Unless 1971 wasn't the beginning of a new system, it was the beginning of an experiment that's now showing terminal symptoms. The gold buying isn't a hedge, it's a confession. And the receipts are wilder than you think. In part 2, I'm going to show you the exact mechanism driving this. The numbers that explain why central banks have no choice but to accumulate gold, the debt spiral that makes this mathematically inevitable, and what it means for your savings when institutions designed to protect the currency are quietly preparing for its failure. In part 1, we uncovered a stunning contradiction. Central banks are buying more gold than any time in 55 years while publicly calling it irrelevant. Now let's get into exactly why they have no choice. Let's get into the math that central bankers understand, but hope you never calculate yourself. The United States federal debt currently sits at $34.7 trillion. That number is so large it's meaningless without context, so let me give you some. In 1971, the year Nixon ended the gold standard, the national debt was $398 billion. In 54 years of modern monetary policy, debt has increased by a factor of 87, not 87%, 87 times. But debt alone doesn't kill systems. Debt service does. In 2024, the United States paid over $1.1 trillion just in interest on that debt. Not paying it down, just servicing it. That's more than the entire defense budget, more than Medicare. It's the fastest growing line item in the federal budget, and unlike Social Security or defense, it can't be cut by Congress. Here's where the trap closes. When the government needs to pay interest, it borrows more money. That new borrowing adds to the debt, which increases future interest payments, which requires more borrowing. This is called a debt spiral, and once it starts, there are only 3 ways out. Option 1, default, simply refuse to pay. This would collapse the treasury market, destroy the dollar's reserve status, and trigger a global depression. No administration will choose this. Option 2, austerity. Cut spending and raise taxes until you run surpluses. This would require cutting entitlements and defense by 40% or more while raising taxes dramatically. No administration will survive proposing this. Option 3, inflate. Print enough money to make the debt manageable in nominal terms while destroying its value in real terms. Pay back borrowed dollars with newly created ones worth less than when they were borrowed. This is the option they're choosing. It's the only politically survivable path. and central banks around the world know it. When the Federal Reserve created $4.8 trillion between 2020 and 2022, more than it created in its entire history before that, it wasn't stimulus. It was the first major wave of debt monetization. The government borrowed, the Fed printed, and the difference was called pandemic response. Now watch what happens next. The Fed's own projections show deficits of $2 trillion per year for the foreseeable future. That debt needs buyers. Foreign buyers are reducing their treasury holdings. China has sold over $500 billion in the last decade. Japan is struggling with its own currency crisis. Who's left to buy $2 trillion per year in new American debt? The buyer of last resort is always the central bank. The Fed will be forced back into money creation not by choice but by necessity. And every dollar created dilutes every dollar in existence. This is why gold matters. Gold cannot be printed. Gold cannot be defaulted on. Gold has no counterparty risk. When confidence in paper money fails, and it always eventually does, gold is the asset that doesn't depend on someone else's promise. Central banks understand this better than anyone because they're the ones making the promises they know they can't keep. Let me show you how the smart money is positioning. China's official gold reserves stand at 2,264 tons. But the Shanghai Gold Exchange has seen over 25,000 tons of gold withdrawn since 2008. Chinese gold miners produce 400 tons annually, and none of it is exported. Independent analysts estimate China's true gold holdings at somewhere between 20,000 and 30,000 tons. Why hide it? Because gold is being accumulated for a purpose, the creation of an alternative monetary system. The BRICS bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now 9 additional members, represents over 45% of the world's population and over 35% of global GDP. They've announced plans for a new payment system outside the dollar. They've discussed trade settlement in local currencies backed by gold. This isn't conspiracy theory. It's in their summit communiques. It's in their central bank policies. It's in the 136 tons they collectively purchased last year. The petrodollar system, the agreement that oil trades in dollars, forcing every country to hold dollar reserves, is being dismantled in real time. Saudi Arabia now accepts yuan for oil. Russia sells oil for rupees, rubles, and gold. The foundation of dollar demand is cracking. And here's the number that should terrify anyone holding dollar-denominated savings. The ratio of U.S. debt to official gold holdings is over 100,000 to 1. Meaning if the United States ever needed to back its obligations with gold, each ounce would need to be valued at over $100,000 just to cover what's already owed. Central banks see this math. They're not buying gold despite the debt situation. They're buying gold because of it. The gold buying is the exit strategy. It's institutions positioning for the moment when the confidence game ends and everyone asks, what actually backs this money? For 54 years, the answer has been nothing except trust. Trust in the Federal Reserve. Trust in the U.S. government. Trust in a system that requires infinite growth to service finite promises. Central banks are telling you with their actions what they'll never admit with their words, that trust is a depreciating asset. Here's what makes this moment different from 1971. When Nixon closed the gold window, the United States was the world's largest creditor nation. Today, it's the largest debtor. When the last system failed, there was a clear successor. The dollar, freed from gold, backed by American economic dominance. What's the successor now? The debt is larger, the printing is faster, the alternatives are being built, and the institutions that run the current system are buying the asset that always outlives the systems built to replace it. Central banks bought 9,136 tons of gold in 2024 because they can read a balance sheet, because they know what debt spirals look like, because they've studied the history of every currency that tried to cheat mathematics with printing presses. They're not preparing for a crisis. They're preparing for a transition. The question is whether you're paying attention to what they do or what they say. For 55 years, the official message has been gold is obsolete, the dollar is eternal, the system is stable. For the last 3 years, the official behavior has been buy gold, reduce dollar exposure, prepare for something else. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. The London gold pool collapsed when the gap between official statements and reality became too large to maintain. The gold buying you're seeing now is that same gap opening up in real time. The central banks have made their choice. They're converting promises into metal, paper into permanence. The question is, what are you doing? If this opened your eyes, share it with someone still listening to the official narrative. Subscribe if you want to understand what's happening before it happens. Hit the bell so you don't miss the next piece of the story. And ask yourself the question that central bankers are answering with every ton they buy. Are we wiser now, or are we just walking the same path in better suits? I'll see you in the next one.